One of the most consistent themes in Jamie Dimon's philosophy is the power of long-term thinking. While many leaders chase quarterly recognition, he often speaks about decades. This perspective changes how decisions are made. Instead of reacting emotionally to short-term fluctuations, long-term thinking creates stability. It encourages patience, preparation, and measured risk. Psychologically, long-term thinking requires emotional discipline. The human brain seeks immediate reward, immediate validation. Markets rise and fall, news cycles amplify fear, and social pressure pushes leaders toward reactive choices. Dimon's approach suggests stepping back, asking whether a decision will still make sense years from now, not just tomorrow morning. In practical terms, this mindset transforms everyday work. Small actions, reviewing details carefully, investing in employee development, strengthening internal systems may not create dramatic headlines, but they accumulate quietly over time. Many organizations collapse because they prioritize appearance over substance. Long-term leaders focus instead on durability. For viewers building careers, this rule invites reflection. Are your decisions driven by urgency or by purpose? Acting daily with long-term intention means showing up consistently even when results feel invisible. It is not glamorous, but it builds resilience that lasts beyond trends. Leadership without accountability becomes performance. Jamie Dimon has often emphasized owning outcomes, especially when things go wrong. Accountability is not simply admitting fault publicly. It is creating a culture where responsibility is shared honestly, without blame or denial. From a psychological perspective, accountability reduces fear. When people know mistakes can be discussed openly, learning becomes faster. Organizations that hide problems often repeat them. Dimon's leadership suggests that transparency, even when uncomfortable, strengthens trust internally and externally. Consider how many individuals avoid responsibility because they associate mistakes with personal failure. But growth requires acknowledging reality as it is. Dimon's philosophy reframes accountability as strength, not weakness. By addressing problems directly, leaders signal that integrity matters more than reputation management. For viewers, the lesson extends beyond business. Radical accountability means examining your own decisions carefully, not with self-criticism, but with curiosity. What could be improved? What assumptions were wrong? This mindset transforms setbacks into opportunities for learning, rather than sources of shame. Financial crises test more than technical skills. They test emotional stability. During turbulent periods, Dimon's leadership often reflected calm analysis rather than dramatic reaction. This calmness is not accidental. It comes from preparation, understanding risks deeply before they become visible to everyone else. Stress narrows attention. Neuroscience shows that under pressure, people become more reactive and less strategic. Leaders who remain calm create psychological safety for teams. When fear spreads quickly, clarity becomes rare. Dimon's approach reminds us that composure is not passive, it is an active decision to slow down thinking when everything feels urgent. Real-life leadership requires balancing realism with optimism. Calmness does not mean ignoring problems, it means facing them without emotional exaggeration. Viewers can apply this rule by developing routines that strengthen focus, reflection, analysis, and deliberate pauses before major decisions. Because in moments of uncertainty, the calmest voice often carries the most weight. Despite decades at the top of global finance, Dimon has often emphasized the importance of continuous learning. Markets evolve, technologies change, and leadership demands adaptability. Curiosity keeps leaders from becoming rigid. Psychologically, Curiosity reduces ego. When someone remains open to new ideas, they acknowledge that knowledge is never complete. This mindset prevents stagnation. Instead of defending old methods, curious leaders explore emerging trends, ask questions, and listen carefully. In a documentary context, lifelong learning appears less dramatic than bold decisions, but it shapes every outcome. Reading widely, studying history, understanding risk models, and engaging with diverse perspectives build intellectual flexibility. Dimon's journey reflects the idea that leadership is a learning process, not a fixed identity. For viewers, curiosity begins with humility, the willingness to admit that growth never ends. Whether in finance, education, or personal development, staying curious protects against complacency. Many leaders try to be heroes. They believe success depends on their individual brilliance. Jamie Dimon's philosophy often emphasizes building strong systems, processes, teams, and cultures that function beyond one person. Ego-driven leadership can create short-term excitement but long-term fragility. Systems-based leadership focuses on structure, clear communication channels, risk management frameworks, and collaborative decision-making. When systems are strong, organizations adapt more easily to change. From a psychological standpoint, reducing ego allows teams to contribute freely. People feel valued when ideas matter more than hierarchy. Dimon's approach suggests that leadership is less about being the smartest person in the room and more about creating an environment where collective intelligence thrives. For individuals watching this documentary, building systems might mean organizing your workflow, setting consistent routines, or developing habits that reduce emotional decision-making. True stability comes from structure, not from personality alone. Failure is inevitable in any long career. What distinguishes resilient leaders is how they interpret setbacks. Dimon's philosophy reflects a practical acceptance of mistakes. Instead of dramatizing failure, he often frames it as data, information that reveals weaknesses to be improved. Psychologically, this approach protects mental energy. When people attach identity to outcomes, failure feels personal. But when failure becomes a learning mechanism, growth accelerates. Organizations that analyze errors objectively avoid repeating them. Real-life leadership examples show that resilience is built through reflection. After challenges, teams review processes, adjust strategies, and move forward. There is no need for excessive blame or emotional reaction. Calm analysis turns difficulty into progress. For viewers, this rule invites a shift in perspective. Failure is not a verdict on your potential. It is feedback, sometimes uncomfortable, but always valuable if approached with honesty. In industries driven by profit, ethical decision-making becomes a defining test. Dimon's leadership philosophy frequently highlights responsibility, not only to shareholders, but to employees, communities, and the broader financial system. Ethics require long-term thinking. Shortcuts may create temporary gains, but they erode trust. Psychological research shows that integrity builds credibility, and credibility creates influence. Leaders who prioritize ethics send a message that values matter more than immediate rewards. This rule also reflects humility. Ethical leadership acknowledges that decisions affect real lives. Policies, investments, and risk choices ripple outward into society. By considering broader consequences, leaders strengthen both reputation and internal culture. For viewers, ethical thinking means asking deeper questions. Does this decision align with my values? Would I be comfortable explaining it openly? These reflections guide choices beyond financial outcomes. One of the most understated aspects of Dimon's philosophy is the idea that leadership is service. Instead of viewing authority as power, he often frames it as responsibility, ensuring that teams have the resources and clarity needed to succeed. Service-based leadership changes organizational dynamics. Employees feel supported rather than controlled. Psychologically, this builds trust, which increases engagement and creativity. Leaders who listen carefully gain insight into challenges that might otherwise remain hidden. Real-life examples of service leadership include mentoring younger professionals, investing in community initiatives, and maintaining open communication channels. These actions may not attract headlines, but they shape culture deeply. For viewers, this rule challenges traditional ideas about success. True leadership is not measured by status symbols. It is measured by how many people grow because of your guidance. Honest communication is often uncomfortable, yet it is essential for effective leadership. Dimon's reputation for direct messaging reflects a belief that clarity prevents confusion. When leaders speak openly about risks, expectations, and challenges, teams can respond more effectively. Psychologically, honesty builds credibility. People trust leaders who acknowledge reality rather than hide behind vague optimism. This does not mean being negative, it means balancing realism with constructive direction. In a cinematic narrative, honesty becomes a form of courage. It requires confidence to deliver difficult messages while maintaining respect. Leaders who avoid tough conversations may preserve short-term harmony, but risk long-term instability. For viewers, practicing honest communication begins with self-reflection. Are you expressing your thoughts clearly? Are you listening actively to others? Honest dialogue strengthens relationships, both professionally and personally. Perhaps the most subtle rule is humility. Long-term success can create distance between leaders and reality. Dimon's philosophy suggests staying grounded, remembering that markets change and no position is permanent. Humility encourages continuous learning. When leaders recognize that success involves teamwork and timing, they remain open to improvement. Psychologically, humility reduces overconfidence, which is often the source of major errors. Real-life leadership stories show that gratitude strengthens resilience. By acknowledging contributions from others, leaders build loyalty and mutual respect. Humility does not diminish authority, it enhances it by fostering authenticity. For viewers, humility means celebrating progress without losing perspective. Growth becomes sustainable when success is viewed as a shared journey rather than a personal victory.